Again, I want to thank everyone for attending this workshop. The structure here, we're going to start off with a brief presentation by myself. I'm Jonathan Brinkman, Principal Planner at FORA, Andy Hunter from Whitson Engineers, and Aaron Harwain from Denise Duffy and Associates. So we're going to give you a brief presentation on Eastside Parkway and then turn it over to the public. We want to hear your comments on the goals and objectives for Eastside Parkway. So roughly an hour and a half for comments from the public. So we'll start off with this presentation, and thank you for being here this afternoon. Okay, so this presentation, we're going to cover three main components. So the first one is about the Eastside Parkway background. I'll be covering that part of the presentation. Andy will cover the roadway network overview, and Aaron Harwain will cover the CEQA goals and objectives, and then we'll be taking the public comment. So to give just some background on Eastside Parkway, we need to start and look at there was a network here prior to base closure. So the base closed, soldiers left in 1994. And so what kind of network did we have on Fort Ord? We had an orthogonal grid, which means the roads of the Army footprint had right angles on them. They were tightly compact roadway network around the barracks, around the mess halls, around the administrative offices. It was internally focused to focus on the housing, the feeding, and the training of the soldiers. It was built to suit the military needs. So the military needed to get to the training areas, so roads were built into the undeveloped parts of Fort Ord for that training. And there were external access barriers. So at every access from the Highway 1, or from Reservation Road, there were gates that the public had to go through in order to get to Fort Ord. So this map here depicts in a little more detail, visual detail, what the regional roads looked like around 1991. So there was no public through access through Fort Ord, but the roads went around Fort Ord. So one way around was the northern route going through Highway 1, Reservation Road, and Blanco Road to Salinas, and then the other route was the southern route, Highway 68, Monterey-Salinas Highway. And back in 1981, a lot of the workforce would live in Salinas Valley, and the jobs would be in the Monterey Peninsula. So these are important transportation routes from one area to the other. After 1991 and after the closure of Fort Ord, for the first time, the community was able to plan a network that could go through Fort Ord. So part of that planning effort, it resulted in the adoption of the 1997 Fort Ord Reuse Plan. And that reuse plan identified Eastside Road as a facility within the on-site portion of the Fort Ord transportation network. The complete roadway network is a mitigation for the base reuse, as identified in the base reuse plan. And the base reuse plan established a fair share financing program. And that financing program gave FORA the obligation to fund its fair share of on-site, off-site, and regional roadways, along with the transit capital improvements. And this was based on the TMC regional transportation model. So the base reuse plan also charged FORA with adopting annual capital improvement programs. Section 3.11.5.6 of the base reuse plan states that FORA's CIP is the principal mechanism for ensuring adequate service levels within resource constraints. So FORA's requirement is that annually it would update the capital improvement program to reflect the proposed capital projects. So Eastside Road has been in FORA's capital improvement programs. It's been an on-site transportation facility, and this has been since 2001 to present. In December 11th, 2009, the FORA board prioritized funding for Eastside Parkway, making it the top funding priority in the FORA CIP. And in subsequent approvals of the CIP, the board's maintained that prioritization. In 2010, county staff suggested renaming Eastside Road to Eastside Parkway, so that's when the name change occurred. And just wanted to get to the next slide here. There were 3 transportation studies on Fort Ord that studied the network, and that network also included Eastside Road, later renamed Eastside Parkway. So the first of these studies was the 1997 Fort Ord Transportation Study. It was prepared by the Transportation Agency for Monterey County in coordination with FORA, and in it, it identified Eastside Road as a 2-lane arterial from Giggling Road to Imgen Road. And it modeled this roadway to accommodate 12,100 average daily trips, or ADT, and then it established FORA's share of that cost at 72% of the total construction cost. In 2005, as required by the Base Reviews Plan, FORA is required to monitor the transportation network in coordination with TAMC. So in 2005, FORA worked with TAMC and prepared the 2005 FORA fee reallocation study. And during that study, it was noted with CSUMB that there would be impacts on that described alignment of Eastside Road. It would affect campus circulation. So they identified a new plan line for Eastside Road, and this was as an on-site facility from Eucalyptus Road and Giggling Roads to Schoonover Drive. And in this study, it was modeled to accommodate 12,475 average daily trips. And then FORA's share was 100% of the total construction cost. So that was a decision made that because FORA has a community facilities district, there's some flexibility in the spending of those dollars. And so FORA took a smaller share of the regional roadway obligation and 100% of the on-site roadway obligations on Fort Ord. The 2005 study also resulted in elimination of the Highway 68 bypass in the FORA CIP, and instead it found that the improvements to General Jim Moore Boulevard and Eastside Road will carry that traffic instead. In 2017, as required by the Base Reviews Plan, FORA again worked with TAMC, who prepared the 2017 FORA fee reallocation study. This study looked at the same network as the 2005 study, with the exception that of Del Monte Boulevard extension was added, and Highway 1, the definition expanded to include transit and other enhancements to intersections with Highway 1 along Fremont Boulevard and Seaside. The Eastside Parkway was modeled to accommodate 18,586 average daily trips and established FORA's fair share at 100% of the construction costs, similar to the 2005 study. The 2017 study looked at a out year of 2035 as the scenario. So it found that the FORA network would result in levels of service, acceptable levels of service, when it's built into 2035, is making those assumptions. So after describing those 3 planning studies and giving you some background, I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Andy Hunter from Whitson Engineers. Thank
you. Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Hunter. As Jonathan was saying, I'm with Whitson Engineers. We're a local civil engineering firm here in Monterey. I'm happy to be here today to give a brief overview of the existing roadway network in and around the former Fort Ord. So the map on the screen includes Monterey Peninsula and the Salinas Valley. Today we're right about in there off of Imgen Parkway. As Jonathan mentioned earlier, when Fort Ord was a closed military base, one had to travel around the perimeter to get between the Monterey Peninsula and the Salinas Valley. Today, with Fort Ord open, these routes are still very similar. They include Imgen Parkway, Reservation Road, Blanco Road, back and forth to Highway 1, and the Monterey-Salinas Highway, Highway 68, from Monterey Peninsula to the Salinas Valley. So now let's take a closer look at the Fort Ord area. Once again, these routes to and from Monterey Peninsula are shown here in green. Highway 68, Blanco Road, Reservation Road, Imjin Parkway, back to Highway 1. And there we are, right off Imjin Parkway on the map. This map I have up on the screen here includes raw average daily trips, average daily traffic, ADT. Jonathan was mentioning that term earlier. Volumes based on the latest AMBAG regional traffic demand model for what is known as the existing condition. So now bear with me as I want to note some of these numbers on the screen. Highway 1 ADT, and this includes both directions, 72,200 trips. Imjin Parkway, existing condition has 15,900 ADT, Blanco Road 23,200. Highway 68, 31,200. Reservation Road 11,300. Davis Road 9,800 ADT. Inner Garrison Road in the leading up to the campus, east of the campus, there's 7,000 ADT. And General Jim Moore Boulevard in Seaside, or the arrow showing 2,300 ADT. Now, what do all these numbers mean? I went through those a little fast. The map here I've got on the screen, some of you might be familiar with. This is just straight off a Google traffic map on a typical Tuesday morning at about 8 o'clock in the morning. As many of you are probably familiar with, red means slow traffic, green is free flowing. As I zoom into certain areas, you can see the different colors on the screen. Highway 1, southbound direction there, red. As I get up closer to Marina, you can see it extend off. And over Highway 68, the various red colors. We've all experienced traffic congestion around the peninsula, so these maps are just a simple way to represent these peak conditions. Let's look at the PM condition. Same thing, this is a Google traffic map just on a Tuesday afternoon about 5 o'clock. If I click through a few of the zoomed in areas a little bit again, here's the Seaside, Sand City, Delray Oaks area. You can see the red on the screen. Now it's heading in the northbound direction or eastbound on 68. And up towards Marina, Imjin Parkway has some red heading back towards Salinas. And Highway 68 has some red, once again heading eastbound back towards Salinas. So now that we've highlighted the existing traffic conditions around Fort Ord, let's review the FORA Capital Improvement Program, or CIP, and the TAMC fee reallocation study that Jonathan was mentioning. One intent of the FORA CIP was to mitigate traffic for the reuse of Fort Ord. This opens the former base up for new local and regional trips, as opposed to the historic closed orthogonal network that Jonathan highlighted. The complete FORA CIP transportation network serves both local and regional traffic. And I'm going to take you through a few slides here to highlight some of the FORA CIP projects. The FORA transportation CIP projects, they are segregated into 3 categories. These 3 on the screen are the regional projects that Jonathan was mentioning, included in the 2017-2018 FORA CIP. There's Highway 1 improvements in the Seaside Sand City area, Monterey Road interchange as well on Highway 1, Highway 156. Off-site transportation projects. We have, sorry, I see a typo there, Davis Road. I'll have to fix that. North and south of Blanco in Salinas. Reservation Road, East Garrison Drive to Davis Road. Then a couple of projects in Marina, Crescent Avenue extension to Abrams Drive, and the Del Monte Boulevard or 2nd Avenue extension in Marina. Oops. Now the on-site transportation projects. Those include, we have a couple more Marina projects, Abrams Drive, which is 2nd Avenue to Crescent Court, 8th Street, 2nd Avenue to Inner Garrison Road in Marina. There's Giggling Road as a project in Seaside, Salinas Avenue, which is Abrams Drive to Reservation Road in Marina, and South Boundary Road upgrade in the Delray Oaks, Monterey area. And Eastside Parkway, which is the subject of this workshop, which is classified as an on-site FORA CIP. The 2017 TAMC fee reallocation study that Jonathan introduced evaluated the FORA CIP in relation to existing and future traffic conditions. The conclusion of the study is that the entirety of the FORA CIP roadway network will mitigate for the reuse of Fort Ord. So previously we highlighted that the current routes to and from the Monterey Peninsula and the Salinas Valley are Highway 1, Imogene Parkway to Reservation Road to Blanco. Got an arrow up there on Blanco. And Highway 1 to Highway 68. There's the 68 into Salinas. Eastside Parkway is intended to be the third corridor to convey traffic through and within Fort Ord towards Davis Road. Davis Road, which I mentioned on the list earlier, is planned to be a 4-lane roadway in the future. Highlighting it up on the screen. So you're not going to be able to read those numbers that I have here, but let me try and review them, some of the highlights. The map on the screen includes raw AMBAG traffic model data for the estimated changes in the average daily traffic, ADT, in the year 2035. It is based on what is known as the resource-constrained reuse of Fort Ord and includes other changes pertaining to the implementation of local general plans. It's important to note that these estimated values include the completion of the entirety of the FORA CIP transportation projects, including Eastside Parkway. And the exact alignment of Eastside Parkway will be determined through the CEQA process, but wherever the alignment ends up, the results of the 2017 TAMC fee reallocation study included about 18,600 ADT at a level of service D in the year 2035 for Eastside Parkway. Now with this built out roadway network, and including Eastside Parkway, Inner Garrison Road leading into CUSUMB, so that same area that I pointed out earlier, would see a reduction in traffic, down about 2,200 ADT from the 7,000 that it was. And with the build out of the CIP, 2035, Reservation Road would see an increase of about 23,600 ADT. Its existing is 11,300. Davis Road would be about that as well. Its existing is about 9,800. And both of these roadways, as I was mentioning earlier, are planned to be 4 lanes. Blanco Road would have an additional 4,200 trips. And its existing right now is 23,200. And Highway 68 heading into Salinas would have about 700 new trips. These numbers, it's hard to see in the black there, but the number just to the left is 4,175. I'm calling that plus 4,000. So these are in addition to the original values. Well, yeah, so the existing Blanco Road traffic is 23,200. In the year 2035, the estimated traffic model says that it would be a plus 4,000 trips, yes. So these are changes in the traffic between existing condition to 2035. So the results of the 2017 fee reallocation study for a no-build scenario shows that by 2035, if FORA does not build the FORA CIP transportation projects, 7 of the existing roadways in the current FORA project list would operate at deficient levels, which is known as a level of service E or F. The 2017 fee reallocation study concluded that transportation network in the FORA CIP would provide sufficient roadway improvements for the approved reuse of Fort Ord. And the purpose of today's workshop is to discuss one of the planned FORA CIP projects, Eastside Parkway. We are starting the CEQA process for the new roadway, and Aaron Harwain from DD&A will describe this process in more detail and the input we're looking to receive today. Thanks.
Can you hear me okay? All right, great. I'm Erin Harwain. I'm with Denise Duffy & Associates. I'm a senior planner and environmental scientist. And please pardon me, I'm going to read a little bit more than I like to during a public presentation. I want to make sure that the 6 o'clock session gets the same information as you guys, and I tend to improv sometimes. So we are here today because we are initiating the environmental review process in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. The purpose of CEQA is to ensure a high-quality environment now and in the future by providing members of the public and the decision makers the potential effects of a proposed project. In compliance with CEQA, FORA prepared a program-level EIR for the reuse plan back in 1997, which analyzed the program for reuse of the former Fort Ord. A programmatic EIR evaluates plans and programs at a more generalized, broad level, while a project-level EIR takes a more focused, detailed look at a proposed project. The programmatic reuse plan EIR evaluated the potential environmental effects of the reuse of the former Fort Ord, but did not analyze all specific plan components at a project level. The reuse plan contained goals and objectives for the reuse of the base and included a proposed transportation network, which identified the need for an east-west corridor to move vehicles from the Salinas Valley to the Monterey Peninsula through the former Fort Ord. The EIR identified an alignment for this corridor, calling it East Side Road. Jonathan and Andy just provided an overview of the additional transportation and planning studies that have occurred since the reuse plan EIR, as well as the need for this corridor. Now, FORA is acting as lead agency under CEQA, initiating the project-level EIR for this corridor. Under CEQA, a lead agency is the agency primarily responsible for funding and carrying out a proposed project, as well as coordinating and consulting with responsible agencies. Responsible agencies are those agencies with jurisdiction over a project. Under CEQA, public participation is solicited for a proposed project early in the environmental review process, typically when a notice of preparation for an EIR is distributed. The notice of preparation must contain a detailed project description. However, because of recent litigation, the court has instructed FORA to go back to the drawing board to consider all potential alignments for this corridor on equal footing. So we are here today without a specific project description for the notice of preparation, nor do we have a preferred alignment. We are starting with the base reuse plan EIR. Recent case law just established that CEQA requires the identification of a preferred project with an accurate, stable, and finite description for a project. A stable project description allows for informed public participation. So we are here today to solicit input from you, the public, before preparing a project description and before issuing the NOP, the Notice of Preparation, to determine what the goals and objectives should be for this public transportation project. According to CEQA guidelines, an EIR must contain a statement of objectives sought by the proposed project. It should also include the underlying purpose. The goals and objectives should be clearly written to guide the selection of alternatives evaluated in the EIR. Goals and objectives are the starting point to developing a reasonable range of alternatives to be evaluated in the EIR. And why is an alternatives analysis important? Because it determines whether there is a feasible way to achieve basic objectives of the project while avoiding or reducing impacts. So we've introduced you to the underlying purpose of the corridor. I also described a couple of reasons why goals and objectives are important. One, because they're required under CEQA, and two, because they guide the alternatives analysis. In addition, setting the goal is the first step to developing a stable project description, which again, we do not have at this time. Since we are soliciting input from you today on goals and objectives, a few definitions and example might be helpful to get those juices flowing. So what are goals and objectives? A goal is a broad statement. It defines what you plan to do in a project, what problem you plan to address. It's the what. Next in the process is identifying the objectives that will help you in achieving that goal. They are more detailed statements describing the ways which you will achieve that goal. They are the why. Let's go over an example. So the setting for this example is a medical clinic or hospital. The goal is to reduce patient waiting time to less than 1 hour to see a physician. I hope that is true. This is a broad general statement. It is really about what the final outcome is that they wish to bring about. In contrast to the goal, these three objectives highlight the narrow, precise, tangible, and measurable objectives to describe how that goal will be achieved. Today, we would like you to tell us the what's and the how's that you feel are important to consider in planning this corridor. This is an overview of the draft schedule for the environmental review process. The schedule is subject to change, so we encourage you to check out the project webpage. The web address is down at the bottom. And we encourage you also to sign up for email announcements. IQEO and Dominique have sign-in sheets back there where you can get in our database. As I mentioned, we will be preparing a focused project-level EIR to touch on some of these milestones and where public participation is really, really important. I will go over some of these. So here we are today, asking for input on goals and objectives. Next, we will be going to the FORA board meeting on January 12th to present those goals and objectives and your public input to the board for consideration. We will then distribute the notice of preparation for a 30-day public review period. During that 30-day review period, we will hold a public scoping meeting, which you can attend and provide public comments. You can also provide written comments during those 30 days. We will then prepare the draft EIR and distribute a 45-day public review period later in the year, where you also have an opportunity to provide comments. We will also hold at least one public meeting during that review period. We anticipate final project approval and EIR certification in July 2019. Again, we will hold at least one public hearing. Now I'll turn it over to Jonathan, who will provide you instructions on how to provide comments today. Thank you.
Thank you, members of the public, for being here today. I want to just go over briefly how we're taking in comments. So at the staff desk, the welcome desk, Dominique and Akuya, please raise your hands up. Okay, over there, there's a white box as well, but they have the comment sheets. And as you complete your comment sheets, we'll put them into the white box. Those comment sheets will be scanned. We'll be transmitting that with the board report on January 12th to the FORA board, so that they are aware of the public comments we received today. There are other ways to submit your comments today as well. You can email your comments to planning@fora.org, and please put in the subject line Eastside Parkway. We also accept comments by mail, so the address above here, FORA at 920 2nd Avenue, Suite A in Marina. That address, please submit your comments on that to that address. We're also taking verbal comments today. So Peter Said has taken a couple of speaker cards already. So if you wish to speak today, please see Peter Said. He's got speaker cards, and we'll progress from speaker to speaker. We'll ask you to come up to this microphone next to the podium, opposite the podium here. We ask that everyone would keep their comments to 3 minutes so that everybody has a chance to provide their comments, and we will summarize those comments today, provide those to the FORA board in the board report on January 12th, as well as we're recording these two workshops, this workshop and the next workshop at 6 o'clock from 6 to 8. So the video will also be available to the public and to the FORA board members. I'm just covering today how best to respond today. Now, that's a question about comments received before today. So you can submit those comments. We can include that along with the board report as well. If there's been letters circulated to board members, for every board agenda, we include correspondence to the board. So yes, if those letters to the board pertain to Eastside Parkway, we will have them available with this board report. Just a note, if you are unable to submit a comment today, we'll be taking comments until December 22nd. So please send those by email or mail, if not today. So I'll call the first speaker, and I'll let you know when you get to 3 minutes, and I'll ask you to summarize so the next speaker can have time. The first speaker today is Paula Duncan Adams.
Thank you. My name is Paula Duncan Adams. I live on 5100 Co Avenue, Seaside. I've lived there for 23 years now. And my big concern, I understand what you're doing, and I understand why you think you're doing it, and that's all well and good, but my concern is the area of Eucalyptus Road that intersects with General Jim Moore. Co Avenue is directly below that. And my concern is, from what you're showing me, that on a perfect Tuesday everything's fine, but what about when it's not perfect? I'm concerned about the traffic when there's accidents. Also, I'm concerned there's a school right there, a middle school, and that also creates a traffic backup. What I'm predicting is that when an accident occurs, that during this particular time, traffic flows well enough around it. But what happens when you bring all that extra traffic into the area? People are going to start to go down Co Avenue, depending on where the accident is, or maybe they're going to go down Kilby or San Pablo. But these particular roads are not built for that kind of traffic, and I want to know how you're going to deal with that. So that's my main concern today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. The next speaker is Molly Erickson. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I get started, I'm curious about the process. This is supposed to be a workshop. At this rate, it's just sort of talking heads into a microphone. Are there going to be responses from FORA staff or any of the consultants?
We're focused on goals and objectives today, so please direct your comments on goals and objectives on Eastside Parkway. If you have questions, we have a frequently asked questions, and you can see staff after the meeting.
Well, I object to this process, which is not a workshop at all, which I believe was trumpeted on all the advertisement. At this rate, we could all just send in an email and be done with it. I think the goal is to try and get some feedback and responses from you all. Are you willing to provide that today?
Soliciting comments on goals and objectives, given the public and you a background. We understand your disagreement with it, and we'd encourage you to give your comments today on goals and objectives, and if you have something specific, to submit those. And if we need to do something further, either the FORA board can tell us to do that as part of their process, but today is as was outlined by our FORA staff and our team that's doing the environmental review process. Does that answer your question, Ms. Erickson? You object to the process, I understand that.
You've stated very clearly as you came up here that this will not be a conversation. That is usually what's meant to be in a workshop.
It's not a debate. Please present your comments. How much time is left?
I'm afraid the FORA process is exactly as it had been, and that is my concern. I'm Molly Erickson. I represent Keep Fort Wild with the law firm of Stamp Erickson. And this process, first of all, the program was not announced today. I even asked when I came in what the program would be, and even 2 minutes before the meeting started, I was told, no, we won't tell you what the program is because it will be presented. So there was no announcement of a 3-minute limitation. There is no announcement of any of this process. Yes, we disagree, and if there is time left at the end, hopefully, you said it ends at 3, hopefully anybody who wants to speak longer can do so. The idea that this is eating into my 3 minutes is yet another example of the problems. I have many questions, and I think this group might benefit because I do have a lot of background with the East Side Parkway, and I would be happy to share it with you, I think, in a public setting, which is appropriate. But I think perhaps I will start with one, and I would appreciate a response. The Whitson contract was signed just last month. It assumes that the EIR and the environmental review will be on the 90% drawings, specifically the discredited alignment. The contract signed last month assumes that the EIR will be on the discredited alignment. Now, the likelihood is that the FORA board will simply rubber stamp. Oh my goodness, there's my 3 minutes. You said I could wrap up, thanks. The likelihood is that the FORA board will simply rubber stamp the same discredited alignment as the preferred project to be considered in the EIR. I think everybody else deserves 4 minutes. My question is, what efforts have you taken and will you take to try and make sure the FORA board of directors does not rubber stamp the very same alignment as the preferred project? And I'd love it if you would respond to this group, and I think the group would like to hear the same information in this workshop.
Okay, I'm going to call the next 3 speakers just so you can be prepared to speak next. The next speaker is Michael Salerno. After that, we'll have Eric Peterson and Mary B. Posey.
Michael Salerno. I'm also from Keep Fort Ord Wild. I'm a local resident also. So today's presentation looks like a change of course. We've been seeing an alignment that's been presented to the public for the past 6 years. It was associated with Monterey Downs. It was very specific. I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of the litigation, but today now we're hearing there's no preferred alignment. So my question is this: it looks like FORA is now in a loop. There's no preferred alignment, but it's been prioritized in the CIP as a very specific alignment and budgeted. So if you don't know where a road's going to go, how on earth do you know how much it costs? So you had a baseline alignment. I think in the CIP it cost $25 million. The new alignment could cost 50. How do we know? So there's that issue. Looking at the schedule, best case scenario, it looks like the process would be completed in 2019. It's middle of 2019. It looks like the EIR process, it's common for them to drag on. What will happen if FORA sunsets on time? Who's going to build the road? Where's the money going to come from? Thank you.
Good afternoon. Name is Eric Peterson, 2014 Transportation Agency for Monterey County Transportation Excellence Award recipient, along with other things. This is truly the road to nowhere. A few minutes ago, I attended the monthly board meeting of the Transportation Agency for Monterey County, TAMC. TAMC has put together the Salinas Marina multimodal corridor, which is a progressive way to get people from Salinas and to Marina and back. I emphasize progressive. It's entirely different from this. The idea is to move people, not to cut down trees. It also duplicates this, and it's funded by Measure X funds along with other things, and is very much likely to happen. I mentioned modern progressive traffic thinking, modern traffic thinking. The state-of-the-art thoughts in planning things like this now are you build for what you need today. You don't build for what you might need in 20 years or 30 years or 40 years. And that's because sometimes you don't need it in 20 years or 30 years or 40 years. An example, General Jim Moore Boulevard is 4 lanes. According to this, 2,300 cars a day. You don't need 4 lanes for a handful of cars. They're, just for what it's worth, there are also sections of General Jim Moore Boulevard that Seaside ought to look at because they violate the Caltrans Highway Design Manual. Anyway, this is basically a big mistake. And if you start looking through Caltrans information, things like that, it just verifies that. As I say, it's the road to nowhere. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for letting me speak today. My name is Mary Posey. I live at 327 River Road off of Salinas, and I drive some of these roads that they mention in the East Side Parkway and the surrounding areas often. And I noticed that one of the expansion includes Davis Road, and right now Davis Road is awful. To make it a 4-lane road, you're going to be looking at eminent domain and acquiring this land, possibly forcibly from the farmers that originally grow crops there. The other problem with Davis Road is that it's going to be a huge expense because you're going to have to build a bridge across the Davis Crossing, which often floods in inclement weather. And we've seen that bridge closed for often of 2 months, so that pretty much negates that as a viable thoroughfare for folks. We have talked about building a bridge over the past maybe 20, 30 years, and that has been met with nothing. The other thing is, how will these alternate roads, the secondary roads from the Parkway, who's going to fund the expansion of these roads? Because that also needs to be taken into consideration. Secondly, I'm looking at possibilities of expanding expanding Intergarrison and Blanco, making those 4-lane, and adding roundabouts, because that will definitely smooth and affect the traffic flow patterns for those roads as well. Roundabouts, often used in Europe, it's been a proven and a much safer way to move traffic from point A to point B, with the exception of stoplights and traffic signals. And also the original Highway 68 intent, my understanding that was supposed to be a 4-lane road back when it was originally built, long before I arrived here in 1974. And if that could be made 4-lane, that would also definitely streamline some of the traffic concerns that we see there on a daily basis for commute traffic. I'm also a member of Monterey Off-Road Cycling. I do road cycling, I do mountain biking, and I'm all for making safer and easier access for alternative traffic on the Monterey Peninsula, and that includes bicycles. If we can get some of the folks that get off their cars and get out there and use a little of two-wheel modes of operation, modes of transportation, I think we'd be better off for it all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I'll call up 3 more speakers: Bill Weigel, Henrietta Stern, and Suzanne Worcester.
Well, I kind of feel like we're having a Trump moment here today. I want to tell you exactly what I mean. First of all, the first thing I was going to comment on was that I was at a FORA subcommittee meeting with supervisors Jane Parker and Mary Adams, and Kate was there, about, I don't know, somewhere 2 to 4 weeks ago. And Jonathan, you were asked specifically, is the alignment the committee is looking at right now the same as the one that went around Monterey Downs that was dealt with in court? And you said, when you were asked the question twice, you said yes. Now today you're saying there's no preferred alignment. So, and this leads into my second concern. I can ask this question, but you don't have to answer it. I get that. You can deny it. That would really make it a Trump moment. The other thing is that you announced a workshop today, and this is definitely not a workshop. I came here expecting a workshop. I think this may be the second time I've come to a FORA workshop where basically you're not required to, I mean, there's really no audience participation beyond this, and we don't get answers to our questions. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Henrietta Stern. I'm president of Fort Friends, Fort Ord Recreation Trails Friends, and secretary of MORCA, Monterey Off-Road Cycling Association. I'm not speaking formally for those groups. We'll probably be submitting formal letters once we have more information. But certainly members have been talking about this issue and just wanted to throw out some comments and focus on some goals and objectives. The current alignment of which we're aware of, which drawings are out there, runs right through or very close to a very popular trailhead at 8th and Giggling. So certainly the recreation community who I speak with is very concerned about any particular roadway, and hopefully it is a different alignment, having a very adverse impact to a very popular trailhead that not only mountain bikers, road bikers, families with dogs, strollers, equestrians, trail runners, all sorts of people in the community enjoy. Also, these 8th and Giggling is very close to what's called the Oak Oval, which will be part of a county park area, as well as the Fort Ord National Monument. So some of the key goals and objectives, and assuming that you truly are going to be looking at a totally different alignment, is one, pick something, if a road is to be built at all, consistent with FORTAG, that's the Fort Ord Regional Trail and Greenway, which was approved by voters in 2016, that entails access to these various trailheads, bike paths, that type of thing. And I notice on this flyer you do say something about having access to trailheads, so that's good. Also, no harm to the current ability of the public to enjoy access to the county and federal trails at the 8th and Giggling area. A safe access to the public if people have to cross from some western point going east to gain access to the trailheads. How are horses and people with strollers or maybe in wheelchairs or families going to get across a road? What kind of means are going to be there to help people safely access the trails? And to design a project to minimize adverse effect on the recreation community. So those are 4 goals. Just off the top of my head, some objectives. The hows is to locate a road alignment to facilitate public access to the county and federal trail system. Include trailheads with parking and bathrooms, even if they're very simple, like BLM has at the Creekside trailhead. And ensure safe passage of multiple users that I mentioned, horses, bikes, families with strollers, dogs, whatever, across the Parkway. If they're coming from west to east, this might be illuminated crosswalks, sort of like they have near the Monterey Sports Center, a tunnel underneath the roadway, an overpass walkway, some way to safely get people from point A to point B to a nice trailhead where people can enjoy and have access to the recreational trails. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Susie Wester. I'm here as a person, a citizen, but I do work at CSUMB, and that definitely influences my perspective. I am a cyclist and bus commuter to work. I work at CSUMB. I used to live in East Campus housing and commuted every day on my bike, and now I live in Monterey, and I commute most days on my bike or on the bus. And so with those in mind, I'm also an avid recreational user and love to mountain bike. So one of the goals I see, there's one giant goal, is to reduce the anticipated and current traffic impacts of commuters from the Salinas Valley to the Monterey Peninsula, while at the same time reducing impacts on wildlife, open space, and open space users, recreational users. Both of those at the same time. I have a few concerns I want to share. One is on wildlife. We have studies that maybe Fred will talk about on foxes and how we're going to lose gray fox populations if we encroach this much onto the open space of the BLM land. Impacts on other wildlife and plants. The fact that that new road would drop people off into Seaside, again, impacting, as someone who commuted along North-South Road a bunch for my son, I know how much traffic that gets, and this would be many-fold higher, so there's a lot of impacts. And also, obviously, on Inner Garrison for CSUMB users, we need to make sure that we keep that as small as possible because of students who walk those paths and people who use them. I have several objectives. One, which is already in the plans but wasn't discussed here, was increasing the width of Imgen Road to match Imgen Parkway with roundabouts so that that is another way of carrying more people. Secondly is increasing that multimodal transportation and thinking about that throughout so that the people who can ride their bikes, if it's safe, people do ride their bikes. This is a very nice climate. You can ride all winter. It's the same thing you can do as increasing the frequency of buses. The most students I know don't take buses because they don't come often enough, and I have to rearrange my schedule to do that. The other idea, I don't know if it's been brought up, is infilling the center of Highway 1. So you add another lane and potentially have a lane that changes direction like the Golden Gate Bridge to help with it because there is so much traffic on Highway 1 and dumping them on Highway 1 isn't necessarily helping. And then finally, for the next time that we are invited, I would like to see some other possible alignments so that, because I do know the backcountry well, and I'd like to be able to give feedback on that. And I thought we would see those today and I could give feedback. But
Thank you for your comments. I'll call up 3 more speakers: John Wizard, Nancy Amadeo, and Jason Campbell.
Hello, everyone. I'm John Wizard. I'm a Seaside resident. I just had a couple of questions. I thought there would be room for dialogue, but now I understand that it's more of a seminar than a workshop. So just so for kind of put it in your mind, I had questions about how Eastside Parkway would fit in with the Oak Woodland Conservation Plan and what FORA and the City of Seaside have done around that work, as well as Seaside East, which is not a great name, but it's what the city's calling it so far, which is about a 700-acre parcels of land on the east side of General Jim Moore, and how that will be developed both for residential, mixed use, light industrial, commercial space, whether Eastside Parkway looks to that and takes that into account, or if it's just Eastside Parkway for our ADT and our traffic today, and that other stuff, we're not going to worry about it yet. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Nancy Amadeo from the city of Marina. I'm not set on a particular alignment, but I am concerned that we do a north-south route called Eastside Parkway, that it appropriately connects to the Veteran Cemetery, because the way the Veteran Cemetery was designed, the main entrance would have been at Eastside Parkway. Right now, the road ends before it reaches the cemetery, so I'm very concerned about that. I understand the concerns about bisecting with walkers, horseback riders, etc. And I agree, I can't remember which speaker it was, I think that either tunnels or bridges, natural bridges over the roadway is an appropriate way of dealing with that problem. I also believe that if we're going to have the impact of the national monument that the recreational users seem to desire, and that it would be another place where tourists will want to come, we need to incorporate parking at Giggling and 8th and parking at the, I believe it's the Creekside entrance, so that visitors to the area will have easy access. They can access it from the Parkway, have parking available, and be able to use the National Monument. At the same time, it doesn't interfere with those who want to bike, walk, ride their horses, because they will have access through the FORTAG approved plan just by adding those land bridges or tunnels. That also positively impacts the migration of animals. We won't have that lovely item called roadkill. So I hope that the board and FORA staff considers those options as they move forward, because we definitely need another north-south route. Imgen Road and 68 will never be able to handle the commuter traffic by itself. General Jim Moore, there's no access, direct access, as a result of the university for vehicular traffic to access it easily. So you either have to use Inner Garrison Road now, which doesn't handle the amount of traffic that would be needed, or you have to go out to Highway 1 and access it from Light Fighter, or possibly even moving up further, maybe going Imgen to 2nd Avenue to Light Fighter to get on General Jim Moore. It's a very circuitous route, and because it's not designed for moving people quickly from one place to another, traffic backs up. So I hope those things will be considered. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jason Campbell. I'm a resident of Seaside, a user of FORA for recreational reasons, and I'm a council member and an alternative for council member for Seaside, and an alternative for a board. Unfortunately, I don't get to have much say since I'm a second alternate. I've sat on the board all at once. But I would like to, I suppose, thank the FORA staff for backing up a little bit on this alignment. Kind of sounds like maybe you were forced to do that, but at any rate, at least now, in theory, the public can participate in setting goals and objectives. My question is, though, without having goals and objectives set for this project, how on earth did it rise to the top of the CIP project? There's apparently no goals and objectives, and you're trying to get that now. So it kind of leaves this process a little bit in doubt when it's already up there without the public input. But to go along with it, I'm going to try and give some goals and objectives. But real quick, to Mr. Peterson, as far as the General Jim Moore and not being designed well, Seaside had no input on that. From what I understand, the county would have very little or no input on the design of the East Side Parkway, because FORA pretty much does whatever it wants. And you know, building roads on the top of ridges is not a problem for FORA. So unfortunately, the jurisdictions do get cut out of that. And yeah, we had some people in the city of Seaside ask why the access roads were pointed directly at their houses. But anyway, that was out of Seaside's hands. Anyway, a goal and objective, how about follow the public will? Forget the numbers for a while and listen to the public. The public does not want a brand new road through the middle of pristine property and tearing down thousands of trees. So how about do not destroy the environment at great cost, do not destroy a very popular recreation area, do not spend money and resources on something that's so unpopular. How about spending money on resources on something pretty much everybody can get behind, like the Monterey Interchange or the places that are already having troubles? I really think, as far as transportation issues, there are a lot of places FORA could focus its money and efforts that would make everybody happy, and going down this road is just wrong, and it honestly, it reeks of Monterey Downs. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. I'll call on 3 more Speakers: Jody Hansen, Don Alra, Robert Savini.
Thank you for this opportunity for public comment. My name is Jody Hansen. I'm the president and CEO of the Monterey Peninsula Chamber of Commerce. We supported the Fort Ord National Monument and preserving 17,000 acres of open space. We also supported the master plan as it was originally conceived. And the transportation element and the transportation network has always included north-south connector, which is now called the East Side Parkway. We are not married to any particular alignment. We believe this parkway is very critical for roadways linking the peninsula to Salinas and Salinas to the peninsula to move our workers back and forth from work. Now, it should be integrated with the FORA trail, and it should also take into consideration wildlife and environment so that it has the least harm. But this is not a yes or no. This is really about how. How do we work together to make this work? And it is not Monterey Downs. It is about our future for our children, our grandchildren. It's not about now. It's about our future. And I hope this is supported and continues to be supported by the community for our workers who are our residents. We need this road. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dawn Alva. I'm a Marina resident and business owner. I also sit on the Economic Development Commission for the City of Marina. So I do believe we need more routes north and south. I'm just questioning the prioritization of the East Side Parkway. My husband or I drive from Marina, technically around the library, to Chartwell every morning, and we have daily traffic issues and bottlenecks around multiple routes. So I drive these back roads quite a bit. With the issues on General Jim Moore and Imgen Parkway, which is, as I was hoping to get a kind of a map when I go to Google to try to figure out where you're looking at precisely to make sure I'm accurate. It looks like we're just going to be dumping the traffic on current issues without any resolve to the actual flow of traffic from point A to point B. So I don't personally see how this makes sense to solve the current as well as future traffic issues with just this particular piece. So since this was a restart, I came to this workshop expecting to gain an understanding of why this prioritization and how this will solve current traffic issues versus just increase current bottlenecks. Thank you.
I had no intention of speaking here, but since this is not a workshop, I just want to add my 2 cents. I commute every day from Pacific Grove to Schoonover Park on Inner Garrison, and it's and I know all the back roads, and despite what Mr. Peterson said, General Jim Moore saves my butt every night because I cannot get up Route 1, because I got to come off Holman Highway, down Route 1 to Sand City, which is totally blocked. So I take 68 to 217 and Jim Moore to get home. On the other side of the coin, I live, and this is one of my goals, I live right where Inner Garrison and Schoonover Road intersect. And I just can see this dumping into that area. The same woman that had concerns about Co Avenue, you're in a situation where when that dumps in there, the East Side Parkway, it's going to be a nightmare. And I'm all for a north-south route, but I see you mentioned there's 7,500 people on Inner Garrison. The last time I looked at the sign, there was 23,000. 23,000 in a year. And I just, and coming home at night, the greatest thing that could happen is close DOD on Giggling. Because in a garrison, since they've opened that, it's a nightmare going out during the rush hour and coming home at the rush hour at night. And I just want you to think, because we opened in a garrison, the stretch between Schoonover and Eastside Parkway, they still dump on a daily basis. There's a mattress sitting there now. If it wasn't for the fact that Stan Cook and Laura helped me with knowing the public works people in Salinas, that'd be a mess. But Benny's nice enough to clean it up. No one really takes care of it. The road's a mess. And I don't know. I'm amazed at how they do business here. That's all I can say. But if you're gonna do this, do it right. That's I think what I'm trying to say.
Thank you for your comments. I'll call the next three speakers: George Riley, Gail Morton, Fred Watson.
Hi, I too expected a workshop. I've been to too many FORA meetings in general, and this is all we get to do is talk to a group, and there's never a dialogue. And I was expecting to ask questions about how come the Fort Ord base reuse plan adopted in 1997 is still living in 1997 concepts, because things have moved on. AMBAG has changed many of its projections on the future growth, transportation, housing needs, and so on. I don't know if FORA has changed its opinions and its perceptions of its assumptions, but that's what I wanted to ask about, because the world has changed since 2000. And the growth and economic projections in this area are enormously different than they were then. My question is, how does the base reuse plan reflect new thinking compared to something that was put in writing and apparently tied to the property rights or property deed restrictions as of 1997? Are we stuck with the assumptions that were made at that time? I just would like to have some questions about that, and I don't seem to have an opportunity to do that. And I want to add that I think this is one reason why much of the public is just sick and tired of FORA, because there's no dialogue, there's no community interaction. There's a group of people who have been in position of power and authority for a number of years. They keep repeating themselves over and over, restating the same priorities over and over, with an enormous amount of new dialogue in play in the community that falls on deaf ears. And to the extent that FORA has a problem with its own future, and they refuse to deal with that seriously either, also only makes it more of a problem. This is a perfect example of why FORA is in trouble.
I'm Gail Morton, and I serve on the FORA board, and I made sure that so many of you got an email to invite you to what I understood was the FORA board direction to have a workshop. I was anticipating something along the lines of what FORA did in an exemplary manner of a charrette, and unfortunately, I feel many of you think this is a charade. Please, please weigh in with your comments. What I did expect today to see as a starting point is some inherent knowledge that the staff has to be shared with me as a director, with the public for our consideration. How can we discuss alternatives if we cannot look at what are the CEQA mitigations when the base reuse plan was adopted that we're supposed to be mitigating? How can I evaluate any alignment that meets those mitigations if I don't know what they are? I was expecting to see those. Tell me chapter and verse. Where are they? I also was expecting that I would be looking at base reuse plan policies. Which policies affect an alignment because we need to meet road objectives? Which policies should the alignment defer to, such as we need to have oak woodlands, that we need to have habitat management, that we have other objectives? I don't know what those are. I didn't know that was my responsibility to research those and bring all of that with me. I thought I was going to be spoon-fed that information. I thought I was going to have a map, and each of you would, that I could draw lines on, that I could understand the policies, the CEQA mitigations, and then look at how does that translate to potential alignments. How am I evaluating pre-existing roads? Can we do this on Intergarrison to 8th, to Giggling, to General Jim Moore? How am I supposed to do that as a director that's representing my city and representing your region in trying to come up with a solution that meets all of our regional plan that we've all adopted and that we're all articulating our interest in? This is an inadequate process, and as a director on the FORA board, I too feel embarrassment because I did not understand that this was what we were doing today. So those of you that I invited, I apologize. I have my city staff, I have many people of the public, and I am embarrassed that I thought this was something else. I'm hoping that this goals and objectives that somebody will put up here, exactly what are the CEQA objectives? Let's start again in the next hour. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Fred Watson. I'm a professor at CSUMB. I've lived and worked on Fort Ord for about 19 years. I was expecting a workshop, just in case you're counting that comment. But I'm trying to fit my thoughts into the framework that you've given us today to speak to suggesting goals. I went and looked at the reuse plan, and the last paragraph of Volume 1 is about the possibility of amending the reuse plan. It has its own provision to amend itself. And I think a goal of a project like this should be to amend the reuse plan to formally recognize what I think is an unanticipated, extraordinary value that the public has placed in the geography around 8th and Giggling. I don't think anyone in 1997 could have foreseen how much value is placed by the public in that area with respect to habitat and recreation. And if we just recognize that as part of the reuse plan, as an amendment, I think that would be good. So that's a goal. A goal for the project itself would be to also recognize that value. And then more specifically, by the way, I commute to the peninsula back and forth every day, sometimes twice a day. I'm very much a part of the experience of traffic and the need for better flow. I think there's improvements to roadways, etc., that can satisfy the transportation needs. A goal for a project that improves our transportation capacity should be to have no visual impact from the recreational areas of the former Fort Ord, no sound impact from the recreational areas of the former Fort Ord, no additional bifurcation of recreational areas on the former Fort Ord. And then with respect to habitat, no additional encroachment of the development footprint, busy roads, buildings, etc., toward the core habitat areas of the former Fort Ord, and no bifurcation of large tracts of oak woodland. On those last 2 points, I'm a co-author of one of the only peer-reviewed journal publications on Fort Ord, period, and particularly on the impacts of development on wildlife. And that paper revealed through fieldwork and analysis that as development moves inward towards the core area of a habitat on forward, the wildlife experience it at some distance. So for example, if you're a grey fox living in a very small amount of habitat in the middle of the former forward right now, if development moves towards you 5 kilometers away, 3 miles away, you're impacted by that, and your population locally on the former forward might actually be extirpated. So you don't actually have to build on the habitat to have an impact on the wildlife. You can build some distance away. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next speakers, Bruce Delgado and Joe Petronic. If you'd like to speak, please pick up a speaker card from Peter Said over here, just to note. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Bruce Delgado, Mayor of the City of Marina. And I think that our beaches and our vast natural habitats that still remain in our vicinity here are an invaluable public asset for our quality of life and our sustainability. That is what is kind of the basis of my following comments. Trying to stay with the direction to speak objectives and goals, although I've never been great at understanding that. So thank you, Aaron, for giving us a good explanation. My first goal would be to save as much money as possible if any East Side Parkway is built, partly because much of the dollars will undoubtedly come from Marina, because Marina has generated something like $85 million from its land assets to Fort Ord Authority, and I think the next closest city is somewhere in the range of $3 to $7 million. So if this is a $30 to $50 million project, you can bet some of it's probably going to be tracked back to the $35 million that Marina recently paid FORA for Preston Park and other things. So saving money is always a good thing, and I think that's a goal. And one objective to save that money would be to utilize existing roads such as 8th Avenue, Giggling, General Jim Moore as much as possible in this alignment. Another goal would be to adversely affect open space as little as possible. And one objective to achieve that goal would be to utilize the existing roads that I've mentioned. Third goal would be to maximize safety, including to CSUMB folks traveling between East Campus back and forth to the main from their East Campus housing back and forth to the university. And one objective that might meet that would be to establish bike and ped paths, bike and ped routes, either north and or south, but parallel to Inner Garrison Road, if the Habitat Conservation Plan could accommodate that. And the fourth goal, and my last goal, is to respect FORTAG, the Fort Ord Regional Trail and Greenway. It respects the natural contours, it respects the landowner values, FORTAG respects the public need and the public desire. And so I think that that should be a goal that whatever happens, what we're talking about today leaves FORTAG intact as a concept that's implementable the way that Fred Watson and Scott Waltz have designed it. Lastly, I just want to make a comment that most workshops I've come to, you get some background information and then you go to work together. And I came about 10 minutes late, and what I've seen is a dearth of information. It feels kind of like a sequoscoping meeting without any background materials or even a factual summary of where we're going to start for this workshop. So thank you very much.
My name is Joe Petronic, and I'm from Marina, and I too would like to echo what I've heard a lot today, that I was expecting something very different here today. I thought it would be more dialogue That being said, you've heard that all already a number of times. Professor Watson, I think, articulated very well some very important concerns. I question whether the road even needs to be built. In fact, I would say that the road does not need to be built. And at this point, given the confusion and everything that's gone on, it would seem appropriate to just stop. And if we could, I know it's a mass amount of bureaucracy, but that's what I would think we should do, is just stop. We have many existing roads that are there that can be improved upon. We've heard that. I heard the person from the Chamber of Commerce speak about the future for our children and grandchildren and how this road is necessary. And I am very concerned about our children and grandchildren and beyond that. And I say for that very reason this road should not be built, but that we have this very precious resource of raw land, open space. People don't make this anymore. This cannot be manufactured. And I think the East Side Parkway is really very detrimental and will destroy that. And that's one of the very special things for our life today and in the future. And I would say, let's stop, because we really don't know where we're going or what we're doing with this entire project.
Thank you for your comments. Kay Klein is the next speaker. Just want to note, if you do want to speak, please fill out a speaker card from Peter Said. Thank you.
I'm thinking that what the last speaker said is very important. There have been a lot of changes since 1997. I think that, as you can see, the public has very much gotten involved with the environmental piece of Fort Ord. We hadn't seen Fort Ord until about 1994 when we could get on the base. That we have FORTAG, which the voters supported. It's very important that we be able to embrace the bicycling aspects of travel. And I know that the design guidelines that FORA did were very excellent, and talking about complete streets, which we in Seaside are talking about a lot now in regards to development. So I'm hearing about an expressway more than a complete street that really encourages people to walk and ride bicycles. It looks to me like the future is going to be a lot more bicycling, a lot more people trying to live within their regions, and a lot more emphasis on environment. I think it's really, really important that we look at what that land is, look at the topography. And also the other concern I have about the Parkway is the dumping off. The streets in Seaside can't, Hilby, San Pablo, Broadway, we can't handle the volume of cars that would be coming that way. So I think we have to go back and relook at things, and I'm very disappointed that we're not seeing alternatives brought forth by FORA today. If there's going to be realignment, we, the public, are not supposed to set up the realignment. We should be able to look at choices and add our comments, and I'm real disappointed that we're not able to do that. Thank you.
The next speaker is Michael DeLapo.
I'm Michael DeLapo with Landwatch, and I want to reiterate some of the questions that our traffic engineer posed. We hired a traffic engineer to give us some advice about, what the best alignment would be, and he said, well, the first thing to do is ask, what is it needed for? What specifically are the traffic problems we're trying to solve? Which of these are existing, which are anticipated in the future? For the ones that are in the future, when are they going to be experienced? Do the development and traffic forecasts in the reuse plan justify the Parkway now or in the future? If not, what specific projects and traffic forecasts do justify it? and how did it rise to the top of the CEIP list? So those are a number of questions that our engineer posed, and I think you can't really get to the point of understanding what the goals are until you understand what the problem is. So we don't really even understand what the problem is. I want to go back to something that a number of people have said. One is another problem is clarifying what are the CEQA mitigations that are required in the plan. And as I understand it from my friend Molly Erickson, the plan does not show the road as a mitigation. So that needs to be examined and clarified. I don't think you want to pay another $500,000 bill to make that mistake again. I would also say that as Councilmember Campbell pointed out, I think it's really time to listen to what the public wants. And I just would like to get a show of hands of people here who oppose the East Side Parkway. So if you oppose the East Side Parkway, okay, now who supports it, who doesn't work for an agency? So I think that that gives you an indication of what the public is asking for. And I would really encourage you, given the failure of the first iteration, given the failure of Monterey Downs, given the continuing opposition that this faces and it will face, to really go back and think, what's the problem? How do we solve it? Give the public some data, because we have not seen anything that really would justify it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Show of hands of other members of the public who wish to speak today at this particular workshop. Okay, my question was about people who wish to speak at the workshop. So I don't see any hands up at this point. So there is one. Okay, please come forward.
Thank you. My name is Susan Schiavone. I'm a citizen of Seaside. I think this project should stop. Unless you have a really creative idea about realignment, it is going to bifurcate another forest area, ignoring the needs of the ecosystem that FORA has been charged to protect. Bifurcating forest lands creates islands, which actually, in essence, destroys the species that need that space. So this includes trees. When you keep cutting roads through trees, you destroy them. You destroy everything that's there. We are charged to protect this land. It is essential that we have borderlands, edge areas for the wilderness areas that we need to protect. The whole corridor that you were talking about going through is the edge area, which is a very popular recreation area. It is the edge zone for the wilderness. And as Dr. Watson pointed out, the more you encroach into that wilderness area, the more you're going to destroy the very wildlife and species that we need to protect. So unless you have a very creative alternative route for this, I do not support this project, and I would say that we should stop it. I also don't see where, if you're hiring the same consulting firm to evaluate the project that engineered the project, I wouldn't do that at my home. I think you need more objective information, and you need to inform the public. So I would suggest you redo this workshop again. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. One last chance, show of hands of anyone who wishes to speak. Okay, next steps. Okay, so we're not in our format for the workshop. We're not taking questions during the workshop. If you have questions, please stay and speak to us afterwards. I don't see any other speakers today, so we will be collating the comment sheets that we received, and we'll put them, include them in the board packet, and include that in the January 12th board report, so they'll be available for board members to access. Yes, our packets are online, and there will be links to that. This is also a recorded workshop, so your comments will be posted on the FORA website as part of our YouTube channel. And then just to note, we will have the workshop tonight from 6 to 8 p.m. So thank you very much.